It began with a file that should not exist. In 1972, a retired British intelligence analyst opened a misplaced envelope in the Public Record Office labelled Miscellaneous. 1945, inside were carbon copies stamped with a black sun insignia and the words, Operation Eclipse, directive from the Reich Chancellery. The documents referenced names, units, and coordinates erased from every official archive. Within weeks, the file vanished, and the analyst was found dead in his London flat, his notes burned in the fireplace. What remained was one fragmentary message typed in fading German ink. Secure the scientists. Secure the light. Erase the witnesses. What followed was buried not by history, but by design. Chapter 1. Operation Eclipse, the last mission of 1945. By the final days of April 1945, the Third Reich had already begun to cannibalize itself. Hitler's thousand-year empire was collapsing in less than 12. The Red Army was encircling Berlin from the east, while the Western Allies pressed from the Elbe. Amid the chaos, the last intact communication from the Führer bunker was not a surrender order. It was a coded instruction transmitted through the SS encrypted channel Rabenstellung. The message carried the directive name Operation Eclipse. At 23:40 on April 24, 1945, a radio operator from SS Signals Battalion 501 logged a brief burst transmission originating from the Reich Chancellery's sub-level communications room. It contained only 6 lines of ciphered text, encoded using an obsolete variant of the Lorenz S42 Kahl machine. When the message was later intercepted by British field intelligence near Magdeburg, Bletchley Park cryptanalysts couldn't match its key to any known cipher book. 2 days later, the transmitter fell silent. That night, under heavy Soviet shelling, 3 trucks bearing Reichskriegsflagge pennants departed from Tiergarten under escort by SS men of the 33rd Waffen Grenadier Division Charlemagne. Their destination was listed as the Harz Mountains, more specifically, the mining town of Nordhausen. When Allied forces entered Nordhausen on April 11th, they uncovered the Mittelwerk complex, where V-2 rockets had been produced under brutal slave labor conditions. But beneath the factory, sealed behind steel blast doors marked Heeresversuchsanstalt Thaith, was a secondary chamber unknown to Allied intelligence. The doors were lined with explosive bolts. When engineers attempted to breach them in May, they discovered they had already been detonated from the inside. Scattered among the debris were melted control panels, fragments of SS identification tags, and a single crate half buried in ash, stamped with the eagle of the Ahnenerbe, the Nazi institute dedicated to pseudo-scientific and occult research. The crate contained a mixture of items, charred notebooks, vacuum tubes, and what appeared to be a metallic sphere the size of a football, its surface etched with alphanumeric codes and a faded insignia reading Project Morgenröte, Project Dawn. The British Alsos mission, codenamed Alsos II, was dispatched to retrieve the find. Their commanding officer, Major Charles B. Daly, recorded in his field log dated May 21st. The artifact emits a low-frequency vibration, unknown composition, interference noted on shortwave bands between 4.5 and 5.3. MATS recommend immediate containment. Object was sealed in a lead-lined box and flown to the T-Force holding depot in Antwerp. By mid-June, it had been transferred again, this time under US custody. Officially, it became part of Operation Paperclip, but no record of its entry exists in the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency's catalogue. In August 1946, a classified MI6 memorandum, document referenced FO INT 3227, surfaced briefly before being withdrawn. The memo stated that British agents investigating post-war scientific transfers had located a surviving engineer from Mittelwerk, Dr. Kurt Heinemann. Interrogated at Camp Dustbin in Frankfurt, Heinemann admitted knowledge of a special transport ordered by Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler in the final week of the war. Kammler, who oversaw Nazi advanced weapons programs, had disappeared in May 1945 under mysterious circumstances. Heinemann claimed Kammler had ordered all Morgenröte materials evacuated to an underground facility codenamed Schacht Dax, Badger Shaft, in the Harz region. The cargo, he said, included not only weapon prototypes but an energy device capable of altering radio signatures. Allied interrogators dismissed it as delusion, but one handwritten note in the margin of the report reads, Refers ECL 45, keep under Eclipse classification. By the 1950s, both the Americans and the British had quietly sealed their eclipse files. When the Bundesarchiv reopened in the 1960s, all documents relating to Kammler's engineering teams had been destroyed, allegedly lost in transit during occupation restructuring. However, an unmarked microfilm discovered in 1991 in the Soviet State Military Archive, WWII, Moscow, revealed something extraordinary. Frame 72B contained a scanned British report titled Eclipse, Phase 2, Containment Measures, Harz Sector. The first page had been blacked out, but a line at the bottom remained legible. Subject matter, not of conventional ordnance classification. Recommend indefinite quarantine under NATO ECL 45 directive. Former NATO archivists who handled ECL 45 confirmed that such a classification existed, but its physical file was stored in a restricted chamber of the NATO Archive Centre in Brussels, accessible only to Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, SHAPE. In 2001, an internal inventory review listed ECL 45 as missing presumed reallocated. No public reference has ever reappeared. The surviving members of Alsos II, before their deaths, made passing remarks to journalists about things we were never meant to bring home. Major Daley's son discovered a sealed envelope among his father's belongings in 1983. Inside were 3 black and white photographs of the Harz excavation site, one showing soldiers posing beside the partially unearthed chamber door, faintly visible behind them, illuminated by a flashlight beam, is the outline of a circular metallic structure embedded in the rock wall, smooth, seamless, and unlike any known wartime material. Over the decades, conspiracy circles have inflated the myth of Operation Eclipse into stories of Nazi flying discs or time experiments, but the historical evidence suggests something far simpler and far darker. It appears Eclipse was not about retrieving technology, but erasing it, ensuring that whatever had been conceived in those final days of the Reich never resurfaced. The last documented movement associated with Eclipse was in September 1945, when a US C-54 transport plane left Tempelhof Airfield bound for Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Its cargo manifest listed only one entry: scientific instruments and experimental apparatus. The aircraft never arrived. Weather reports show clear skies. No distress call was ever recorded. The US Army Air Forces declared it lost over the Atlantic. All crew members were listed as missing. When the wreckage was allegedly recovered by the US Navy in 1952 during routine sonar sweeps, the official report, NAVAD 7021, was immediately classified. One marginal note in the index simply reads, Crossref, Eclipse Recovery, transfer to Fort Detrick. To this day, Fort Detrick's catalogue of post-war acquisitions includes a file redacted under exemption code, NARA 5B 7C, pertaining to foreign material of unknown composition seized under military custody. Its date of entry? October 1945. The custodian's initials? CBD, the same as Major Charles B. Daley. 70 years later, the story of Operation Eclipse remains buried beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. The Reich may have fallen, but its final order endures, hidden behind closed archives and missing files. Somewhere beneath the Harz Mountains, the echoes of Kammler's last transmission may still linger, waiting for the signal that was meant to be silenced forever. Chapter 2: The Ghost Convoy of Murmansk. In the winter of 1942, the Arctic convoys were a lifeline and a death sentence. Sailing from Loch Ewe to Murmansk, Allied merchant ships faced constant Luftwaffe raids, U-boat ambushes, and temperatures that froze steel solid. Convoy PQ-17 became infamous for its destruction, a catastrophe that claimed 24 ships and nearly 400 men. But hidden in Soviet naval records declassified decades later, another entry appears, one with no corresponding Allied documentation. Dated December 3, 1942, it reads, Convoy Kappa, 6 vessels, Royal Navy escort, departed Iceland. Classified cargo, orders, direct delivery to Murmansk under signal silence. According to the Russian Central Naval Archive, TSVMA, file 457-11-1942K, Convoy Kappa never arrived. Its coordinates vanish midway between Jan Mayen and Franz Josef Land. No distress calls, no debris. And yet, one peculiar document, a decoded German naval signal intercepted by Bletchley Park mentions a British convoy sighted near Bear Island, non-responsive to challenge. The Kriegsmarine logbook for U-387 records the event. Contacted group of ships under blackout condition. No return signal. Presumed decoy. The entry ends abruptly. 3 days later, U-387 was sunk by a depth charge. Her entire crew lost. The official British Admiralty War Diary makes no mention of any convoy under the codename Kappa, but an intelligence summary issued to the Joint Intelligence Committee on January 12, 1943, includes a cryptic line. Arctic operations continue as scheduled. K-class transports unacknowledged by Soviet command. Communications blackout persists. Only one officer had authority to approve such movements. Rear Admiral Douglas Fisher of the Trade Division. His personal files, released in part in 1978, contain several pages missing from his 1942 logbook. Between entries dated November 30th and December 10th, there is a 10-day gap. At the bottom of the preceding page, faint pencil marks read, Kappa orders signed, cargo secured, under SOE discretion. The Special Operations Executive had long used the Arctic route to deliver equipment to the Soviet front under the Lend-Lease program. But this mission's secrecy was beyond routine. Surviving personnel rosters indicate that one of the escort vessels, the HMS Trelawney, was fitted with experimental radar locating systems developed by the Telecommunications Research Establishment. Those devices, at the time, were classified under the codename Type 79X SAS, precursors to post-war electronic countermeasure systems. If Kappa carried advanced radar or Enigma interception gear intended for Soviet testing, its disappearance could explain decades of silence. In 1978, a Norwegian salvage team exploring wrecks near Novaya Zemlya located the twisted hull of a vessel bearing faintly legible Royal Navy lettering, RN-K45. There was no such registry in any Admiralty index. Divers reported unusual magnetic interference affecting their instruments, forcing an early withdrawal. When they returned a week later, the wreck's coordinates were under guard by a Soviet naval detachment. Within 48 hours, NATO dispatched an inquiry through the Norwegian Defense Staff. The official Soviet response: no such operation exists. All subsequent dives were prohibited by the Murmansk Military District Command. Unverified testimony from a surviving crewman of PQ-18, interviewed in 1982, describes hearing a phantom signal during a night watch north of Svalbard. He recalled a voice repeating a distress phrase, Kappa, 3 to 7, under ice, no light. The coordinates transmitted placed the source directly in the area later restricted by Soviet authorities. British Signals Archives confirm that, between December 7 to 10, 1942, a series of unidentified Morse bursts were logged by the monitoring station at Keflavik. The call sign decoded to KXK, matching the convoy's unknown code. No further transmissions were received. By the Cold War era, fragments of the Kappa incident had trickled into classified NATO naval reports. In 1961, during Operation Ivy Bells, the US Navy's secret undersea wiretap program in Soviet waters, sonar operators recorded an anomalous metallic echo near the same coordinates listed in the Lost Convoys chart. One after-action summary reads, object stationary at 820 meters depth, structure resembles composite hull, length est, 120 meters, or not Soviet origin. The report was stamped top secret, see eyes only, and buried within NSA's Arctic Communications Archive. Under entry, Echo K, the Soviets too seemed aware of something in those waters. A declassified KGB maritime memorandum from 1965 mentions foreign material recovered by the Northern Fleet's Deep Sea Unit. The cargo, according to the memo, was transferred to Severomorsk and sealed under internal designation Object Mur-17. When the USSR dissolved, the documents surfaced briefly in an archival auction before being confiscated by the Russian Defense Ministry. Independent researchers attempting to trace Object Mur-17 were warned to cease inquiries for reasons of state security. What makes Convoy Kappa so unsettling isn't its loss, it's its deliberate erasure. British Merchant Manifest from December 1942 skips sequential numbering between PQ-16 and PQ-18, with PQ-17 retroactively adjusted in post-war ledgers. The Royal Navy's archive clerk in 1946 noted administrative correction for misclassified convoy identification. Yet, an internal memo dated 1953 between the Admiralty and the Ministry of Supply references the testing of recovered Arctic materials consistent with Kappa consignment. No follow-up exists. Theories abound. Some believe Kappa was an experimental delivery of captured Enigma units to the Soviets for decryption analysis, an act so politically sensitive that its failure could have shattered Allied cooperation. Others propose it carried early radar absorption technology derived from German prototypes found in Norway. But one anomaly stands out. An American intelligence cable intercepted by the UK's GCHQ in 1952, later released under FOIA, stating, "Recovered element consistent with 1942 British design, magnetic resonance atypical," classified under Magic 3 review. That label was reserved for foreign objects of unknown origin. When questioned in 1985, a retired US Navy acoustic engineer named Charles Whitmore, who participated in Ivy Bells, claimed that the sonar echoes from the Arctic wreck didn't sound like any ship we knew. It rang like glass. Shortly after that interview, Whitmore died of a sudden heart attack. His personal notes, acquired by a Norwegian journalist, included a rough sketch of the wreck's outline. Sleek, curved, almost organic, and one line of text. Markings, Kappa 6. Lights inside hull still visible. No trace of convoy Kappa exists in the British National Archives, nor in US naval records. Yet Arctic fishermen still report interference on radio frequencies near Novaya Zemlya, a faint repeating pulse that cuts through static every few hours. Russian meteorological stations have logged the anomaly since 1993, describing it as periodic electromagnetic discharge consistent with submerged transmitter. The frequency matches the range once used by Royal Navy emergency channels during World War II. If Kappa ever existed, it did so in the shadows of wartime desperation, hidden beneath the ice and bureaucracy of two empires that agreed, without ever speaking, to forget it. Its ghost lingers in the static of the Arctic winds, a signal trapped under 70 years of frozen silence, still waiting for someone to answer. Chapter 3. Project Heimdall. Listening to the Iron Curtain. In the tense early years of the Cold War, when the ruins of Europe still smoked and Berlin was a city sliced by barbed wire and suspicion, the war did not truly end, it simply changed frequency. Between 1951 and 1957, an operation known only to a handful within the CIA and MI6 sought to pierce the Eastern Bloc's most guarded secrets. Officially, it was a telecommunications maintenance initiative, part of a post-war rebuilding effort. In reality, it was a surveillance program hidden in plain sight. Project Heimdall. Heimdall began in the spring of 1951, under the direction of the newly formed Office of Scientific Intelligence, OSI. Its stated purpose was the installation of signal amplification infrastructure in occupied West Germany, and later within the Soviet-controlled zones through industrial intermediaries. To mask the operation, the CIA contracted Siemens AG and Telefunken to manufacture specialized radio relay towers for civilian broadcasting. Inside the towers, however, lay concealed microphonic sensors and field resonant coils designed by Bell Laboratories, a covert acoustic array capable of detecting electromagnetic fluctuations up to several kilometers away. They were to listen through walls, converting vibrations into signal data and transmitting encrypted packets to CIA collection hubs in Bonn. The heart of Heimdall was a compound north of Hamburg, codenamed Station Flare. There, rows of oscilloscopes monitored the faint hum of the divided continent. Agents rotated in 12-hour shifts, logging everything from Soviet radar sweeps to whispered telephone exchanges bleeding through faulty lines. The early results were unremarkable until late 1953, when technicians began intercepting anomalous pulses from relay stations near Magdeburg, Leipzig, and Dresden, all located in the former footprint of the Nazi Funkaufklärungsstelle, Germany's wartime radio interception service. The transmissions followed no known pattern, short bursts of Morse code interspersed with dead air, and the occasional phrase in archaic German engineering jargon, Drahtnetz aktiv, Kanal 7 überschreiben, Gerät 0. Analysts at Station Flare initially assumed these were rogue East German tests, but as months passed, the signals repeated with near-perfect periodicity every 27 hours. In February 1954, CIA technical advisor William Bill Grayson was sent to investigate. His mission logs, partially declassified in 1999 under FOIA request 874121, detail a journey deep into East German territory under the alias of a Swiss telecommunications consultant. With the help of a West Berlin courier network, Grayson gained access to a relay site near Wittenberg. Beneath a decommissioned signal tower, he found a sealed access tunnel marked with the faded insignia of the Reichspostministerium, the old Nazi postal ministry. Inside were dormant power conduits and a control panel fused by decades of corrosion. But on the far wall, untouched by decay, were 3 Siemens-type vacuum tubes softly glowing, powered by an independent circuit. Someone, or something, was still feeding them current. Grayson's field report, dated March 9, 1954, describes hearing rhythmic clicking sounds through his headset, too structured to be random noise. He transcribed the sequence, later matched to a 1944 frequency used by Nazi intelligence for encrypted field testing. The call sign identified was D12 Heimdall, a codename Grayson had never seen before, yet identical to the CIA project name itself. The coincidence unsettled his handlers. 2 weeks later, his cover was blown. He was last seen boarding a train toward Potsdam. His body was never recovered. The CIA closed his file with the annotation, "Presumed deceased, cause undetermined." Following Grayson's disappearance, Station Flare's equipment began to malfunction. Logs show severe interference on every Heimdall channel, producing audio distortions resembling human speech. Operators described it as a voice under static. One technician, Sergeant Alan Brooks, recorded a transmission on June 2, 1955 that was later transcribed by cryptanalyst Helen Wexler. Fortsetzung des Tests. Heimdall einsatzbereit. Continuation of test. Heimdall operational. The broadcast lasted 27 seconds before the system overload blew out half the oscilloscopes. Wexler, shaken, submitted a memorandum to CIA Director Alan Dulles, recommending the termination of Heimdall. Instead, Dulles ordered expansion. By 1956, under cover of the US Information Service, additional relay sites were embedded along the Iron Curtain, stretching from Bavaria to Schleswig-Holstein. The signals intensified, appearing not only on CIA monitoring bands, but also on Soviet frequencies. Soviet engineers in East Berlin's Communications Directorate filed complaints to Moscow about radio contamination of uncertain Western origin. In August 1956, the KGB established a counter-operation, Project Tantalum, to trace the interference. They found one of their own relay towers near Dessau, emitting signals their technicians had never authorized. When they dismantled the unit, its interior revealed components bearing pre-war serial numbers, manufactured by Telefunken in 1944, identical to the Heimdall equipment the CIA had secretly redeployed. Somehow, technology from the Third Reich's defunct signal network had become entangled in both sides' surveillance architecture. The final known Heimdall operation took place in March 1957. The CIA dispatched a joint Anglo-American team to deactivate the East German installations after receiving reports of electrical injuries among technicians. Witnesses described faint light emanating from underground conduits and vibrations strong enough to distort nearby magnetic compasses. When they sealed the last relay chamber outside Leipzig, team leader Captain Robert Hale filed a terse after-action note. The system talks back. 2 weeks later, Heimdall was quietly dissolved. All hardware was ordered destroyed, documentation reduced to microfilm, and personnel reassigned to Operation Gold, the Berlin Tunnel wiretap project. 30 years later, during the reunification of Germany, a construction crew laying fiber optics outside Leipzig unearthed a rusted metal container sealed in asphalt. Inside were 30 magnetic wire spools labeled Telefunken 1944, Agentum des Reichspostministeriums. When tested by technicians from the Fraunhofer Institute, the spools emitted trace electromagnetic signatures, faint but measurable, continuous, as though still powered. An internal note from the German Federal Intelligence Service, BND, in 1993 states, possible link to Allied listening network Heimdall, recommend secure containment. The spools were placed in an underground vault in Pullach, their contents never publicly disclosed. Declassified NSA documents from 2004 reveal one last unsettling detail. Between 1991 and 1992, ground sensors in eastern Germany recorded spontaneous signal emissions on Heimdall's original frequency, 4.53 MHz. originating from no known transmitter. Engineers triangulated the signal to an abandoned relay site outside Wittenberg, the same one Grayson had entered 40 years earlier. When a Bundeswehr unit was sent to investigate, the bunker was gone, collapsed, buried by soil and roots, as if it had been erased. But radiation meters detected an inexplicable energy spike beneath the Earth. The readings repeated every 27 hours. Today, the Heimdall files remain partially classified under US and NATO Archival Code EI-12. In debriefs, former intelligence officers describe it only in whispers, a ghost frequency, a line that once carried the voices of a defeated empire across decades of silence. What it transmitted and who was listening remain questions no government agency has ever chosen to answer. Chapter 4. The Warsaw Protocol: Secrets of the Abandoned Embassy. The year was 1949, and Europe was no longer divided by armies but by memory. The war had ended, but not cleanly. In the ruins of Warsaw, reconstruction had barely begun, when a demolition crew clearing what was left of the former German embassy discovered a steel diplomatic pouch buried beneath collapsed masonry. The pouch was scorched, locked, and wrapped in a fragment of a Kriegsmarine signal flag. Inside were 5 sheets of brittle vellum, written in German and encoded in a cipher unused since 1945. The documents bore the insignia Sonderkommando D, a naval special detachment long believed annihilated at the war's end. Each page was marked Geheim and referenced coordinates in the South Atlantic. The final page carried a single typed line, Unternehmen Neuanfang fortgesetzt. Cargo secured. Operation New Beginning continued. Cargo secured. The discovery reached Polish intelligence, then known as the Department of Public Security, UB, whose analysts recognized the implications immediately. If the documents were genuine, they suggested that post-surrender German naval units had continued operations under orders issued after May 1945. The pouch was sent to Soviet authorities stationed in Poland, but the chain of custody fractured. A UB transport log dated August 3, 1949, records the pouch being sealed for transfer to Frankfurt Allied Liaison Office. It never arrived. For years, its existence was dismissed as rumor, until 1963, when an East German defector, Captain Helmut Schroeder, surrendered to the CIA in West Berlin. Among his microfilm documents was an item labeled the Warsaw Protocol. According to Schroeder's testimony, the protocol referred to a clandestine agreement struck in the chaotic months following Germany's surrender. Western intelligence, fearing Soviet acquisition of advanced naval and missile technology, had allegedly entered into secret arrangements with surviving German officers to secure experimental data in exchange for immunity and relocation. The Soviet archives support fragments of this claim. A 1946 NKVD report from Admiral Lev Galler to Stalin mentions interference from Anglo-American agents in South Atlantic pursuit operations, and a mysterious cargo not human transported aboard submarine U-530 before its surrender in Mar del Plata, Argentina. The Warsaw Protocol, as reconstructed from partial decrypts, outlined 3 primary directives: retrieval of classified weapons technology from unaccounted Kriegsmarine, Depots Die 2, extraction and protection of scientific personnel for Western, custody, 3, permanent suppression of all related evidence through controlled destruction of archives. The final line of the document, translated from German, reads chillingly: silence will ensure survival of the Reich in another form. American intelligence at the time publicly denied any such operation, yet internal G2 Army intelligence memoranda from 1949, Refen G2X 712, acknowledge unexplained activity by former German naval cadres operating beyond jurisdiction, with possible Western coordination. In 1950, an internal audit by the US Counterintelligence Corps found multiple unlogged assets arriving in Europe from Argentina under false repatriation programs. These included individuals later confirmed as former Kriegsmarine engineers once stationed in Kiel and Peenemünde. Each had new identities, new passports, and employment in NATO-affiliated research institutions. In 1951, British journalist Victor Armitage, investigating the resurfacing of German maritime scientists, received an anonymous package containing a single photograph. It depicted the German embassy ruins in Warsaw, same location, same angle as UB's original demolition records, but with one detail changed: a faint black mark on the doorframe resembling an anchor within a circle. Armitage published his findings under the headline, "The Embassy That Would Not Die." 2 weeks later, his flat in Chelsea was ransacked. Armitage survived, but the negatives were never recovered. The Polish Ministry of Culture later classified the former embassy site as restricted property, citing structural hazards. No excavation has been permitted since 1951. Yet in 1974, seismic mapping beneath the district revealed an unaccounted subterranean chamber extending toward the Vistula River. The chamber's alignment matched blueprints of a pre-war drainage system repurposed during the Nazi occupation. Soviet engineers attempting to drill for soil samples reported unusual magnetic deviation in their equipment and were ordered to abandon the site declassified. CIA cables from 1965 between Warsaw and Langley, published briefly in a Senate oversight hearing before redaction, confirm that Soviet recovery teams were active in Warsaw targeting classified German naval records linked to submarine deployments, possibly linked to Western coordination. The US ambassador's office was instructed to observe without interference. The next year, the same coordinates appeared again in a NATO internal brief, annotated Protocol W, Maritime Retrieval Initiative. Do not reference publicly. Every investigation into the Warsaw Protocol ended abruptly. Those who pursued it, Polish archivists, German historians, even Soviet officers, either lost access to the records or vanished from public life. In 1981, one such investigator, Professor Janusz Kowalczyk of the University of Gdańsk, obtained permission to photograph declassified UB files from 1949. Within the rolls, he found a faded carbon copy of a manifest listing, sealed diplomatic pouch. Content, 5 pages, ciphered classification, Sonderkommando D. The 5th entry's status read, delivered to liaison, awaiting destruction order. 3 days after filing his discovery, Kowalczyk's home was burglarized and the film negatives were stolen. He died of a heart attack within the year. In 1994, the Polish Security Archive, AIPN, quietly published a restoration log of wartime diplomatic holdings. Entry number 112C was labeled Embassy Recovery Material, former German property. The remarks section contained a single line, record sealed until 2075 by international agreement. To this day, Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs refuses to comment on what the protocol contained, or why its files remain classified beyond the standard period. NATO's own archival database lists the Warsaw Protocol under category E12 Black Seal, a designation reserved for bilateral intelligence agreements whose disclosure would damage current defense relations. The embassy building itself no longer stands. It was demolished in 1958 under the supervision of Soviet construction teams. However, an aerial photograph from 1959, taken during Warsaw's reconstruction, reveals an anomaly. Beneath the new foundations lies a rectangular concrete slab darker than its surroundings, measuring roughly 20 meters in length. Modern ground-penetrating radar scans in 2017 detected metallic density beneath that slab, but excavation permits were denied. Whether the Warsaw Protocol represented a real post-war pact or a convenient cover for looted technology remains unclear. What is undeniable is the consistent pattern of suppression surrounding it. From 1949 to the present, every reference to Sonderkommando D or cargo not human has been systematically erased. The trail ends where it began, in a basement under a city rebuilt atop its own ashes, where the ghosts of one war were buried to prevent another. And somewhere, sealed beneath concrete and silence, the remains of that steel pouch may still rest, its contents quietly dictating a history that never made it to the archives. Chapter 5: The Siberian Vault, Shadow Archives of Operation Paperclip. After the guns fell silent in 1945, the Allies faced a new kind of race, one not for territory, but for mines. The Americans called it Operation Paperclip. The Soviet equivalent was Operation Osławiakim. Both sought to seize the remnants of Germany's vast military intellectual machine. Physicists, rocket engineers, chemists, doctors, anyone whose work could tilt the balance of the next war. Thousands were captured or recruited, hundreds more vanished. Officially, those missing scientists never existed. But in the winter of 1958, deep inside Krasnoyarsk Krai, Soviet intelligence stumbled upon something that suggested otherwise. The report came from Lieutenant Colonel Pyotr Ignatiev of the GRU's 9th Directorate. During a survey of abandoned Gulag infrastructure near the Yenisei River, his team detected irregular seismic readings under permafrost terrain northwest of Norilsk. Beneath the ice, instruments registered hollow chambers at depths inconsistent with natural formations. The area was marked on old NKVD maps as Zone 74V, an uninhabited research perimeter. Ignatiev's initial dispatch described metallic resonance and subsurface voids resembling constructed vaults. When excavation began, they discovered reinforced tunnels lined with corrugated steel stamped with German manufacturer codes, Krupp AG, 1944. The first chamber they entered contained rusted machinery and sealed crates bearing faded Luftwaffe emblems. Inside were blueprints labeled Project Nachtfalke, Night Falcon, featuring aerodynamic sketches reminiscent of early jet-propelled interceptors, though far beyond known wartime designs. The drawings included specifications for plasma resonance Antrieb, a plasma resonance propulsion concept years ahead of its time. The Soviets believed they had uncovered a lost experimental lab from the German retreat, but deeper in the vault, they found evidence suggesting otherwise. Painted on one bulkhead in peeling red letters were the words Wissenschaftliche Kolonie D, Standort Sibirien. Translation: Scientific Colony D, Siberian location, KGB archivist. Natalia Paskova, who processed the initial report, later testified that the discovery sent Moscow into quiet panic. If German scientists had established a post-war research colony inside Soviet territory without detection, it would mean an intelligence breach of catastrophic proportions. Within weeks, the site was placed under direct control of the Ministry for Medium Machine Building, the same ministry overseeing the Soviet atomic program. The designation changed from Zone 74-5 to Object 74-5. All personnel involved were sworn to silence. The GRU was excluded. Oversight was transferred to an internal team led by General Sergei Kravchenko, a man known for handling unacknowledged assets. Declassified fragments from the Krasnoyarsk Technical Archives describe the vault's internal layout: 12 compartments, one central reactor chamber, and multiple living quarters. Beds, utensils, and notebooks indicated long-term habitation. The journals recovered were written in a mixture of German and Latin script, many signed only with initials. One recurring name, Dr. K. Heinemann, matched. A scientist previously listed in US paperclip rosters as missing since 1946. The notebooks referenced ongoing experiments involving magnetic field propulsion and energy harmonics, and frequent mentions of directives from Kammler, the same Kammler, who had overseen the SS's secret weapons division, presumed dead in May 1945. In March 1959, Soviet technicians attempted to power the vault's remaining generators. Witnesses described an audible hum followed by electrical failure across the entire site. A classified KGB memo dated April 2, 1959, reported acute radiation-like exposure symptoms among the engineering team, despite no nuclear materials being present. Within days, the vault was resealed, its entrance covered by reinforced concrete. The official reason: containment of hazardous industrial waste. All surviving personnel were reassigned to remote regions, many under new identities. Ignatiev's report was buried in the GRU Central Archive under reference file 12 SAR 43K, where it remained sealed for 4 decades. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, a handful of these Cold War vaults were catalogued by Russian intelligence reform commissions. Object 74-Phi was listed briefly in an internal inventory before being redacted from subsequent versions. A lone footnote in the committee's 1992 report reads, Status: classified. Contents: Western origin scientific personnel detained until 1961. Termination: Phase Theta. No elaboration followed. Phase Theta, cross-referenced with other archives, appeared only once before, in a 1961 KGB operations ledger describing the liquidation of non-compliant research teams. Rumors of the Siberian Vault resurfaced in 1998, when a former FSB officer leaked a partial transcript of an interrogation conducted in Omsk during the 1960s. The subject, identified only as Witness R, claimed to have worked as a translator at Object 74-5. His statement, though fragmented, was chilling. They were not prisoners, they were continuation. They worked willingly, under protection. When Moscow ordered closure, they sealed themselves inside. When pressed to clarify, he added, "The machines were still running. They said the field must not decay." In 1999, satellite imagery, analyzed by Western intelligence, confirmed extensive underground structures beneath the permafrost, near the coordinates matching Ignatiev's report. The tunnels appeared to have collapsed partially, but thermal readings suggested residual heat deep within. The US Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, quietly issued an internal assessment. Recovered German technology, potential continuation facilities, Siberia, which was later retracted. A single diagram survived in leaked copies. Concentric circular chambers arranged like a turbine, each labeled Test Bed Theta. The Russian government has since denied any knowledge of Object 74-5. Officially, the area is part of a restricted mineral zone, closed to civilians for environmental reasons. However, independent expeditions attempting to reach the coordinates have reported unusual electromagnetic disturbances, compasses spinning erratically, GPS units failing, and cameras producing unexplained static artifacts. One expedition in 2007, led by researcher Viktor Borodin, disappeared after sending a single radio message. "We've found the shaft. It's open." No further contact was received. Today, the so-called Siberian Vault exists only in rumor and redacted papers. Yet fragments of declassified Soviet correspondence show a pattern. Between 1958 and 1961, dozens of Western scientists who vanished after the war had their names quietly removed from wanted lists. Their families received unsigned letters from non-existent institutions in Vienna and Zurich, expressing condolences and noting that their work continues for the betterment of mankind. The signatures on those letters matched those of Soviet intelligence officers from the WWII transfers in 2017. An anonymous upload to a European archival forum revealed scanned excerpts from a 1960 KGB inventory marked Theta Archive. The document contained an entry referencing Object 74-5, Krasnoyarsk territory, noting termination of Western personnel under Phase Theta, with partial document transfer to Facility Dietrich, USA. That last phrase, Facility Dietrich, matches the American bioresearch base known today as Fort Detrick, Maryland, the same installation connected to recovered assets under Operation Eclipse. Whether coincidence or continuation, the connections form a chilling symmetry. From Kamler's vanished scientists to the sealed chambers under Siberian ice, to the classified transference of data between Cold War adversaries, each fragment implies a single buried truth. The victors of 1945 may have divided the spoils of war, but not its secrets. Somewhere beneath the frozen tundra of Krasnoyarsk, a vault still sleeps, its walls humming faintly beneath the snow, preserving the last pulse of a war that was never meant to end. It ends where the silence begins. Decades after the last declassified file was sealed and the final witness buried, new fragments continue to surface, each more contradictory than the last. Operation Eclipse, the Ghost Convoy, Heimdall, Warsaw, the Vault, they form a constellation of erased histories, threads woven through decades of denial. Each discovery answers nothing but deepens the uncertainty. Were these isolated events, or the remnants of a single design? Somewhere in the unopened archives of NATO and the dust-choked basements of Moscow, the paper trail still exists. What it leads to, no one can say. Perhaps some wars never truly end. They only go quiet.